Beneath the streets of a city that today receives millions of tourists a year, beneath the colonial cobblestones and the foundations of Catholic churches built over destroyed temples, there is a labyrinth, a system of tunnels carved into rock and lined with perfectly assembled stone walls without mortar, with blocks that fit together with a precision that defies explanation. Those tunnels have been there for centuries. The people of the city know them in legend, in their myths, in their stories of treasures and disappearances. But until January of 2025, no one had been able to demonstrate with scientific technology that they truly existed and to map exactly where they run. That city is Cusco in Peru, and the tunnel system has a name in Quechua that says it all: Chinkana, the labyrinth. Leave your like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. To understand the magnitude of the discovery, one must first understand what Cusco was to the Incas. It was not simply the capital of the Tawantinsuyu Empire, the largest state that ever existed on the American continent, with a territory extending from what is today Colombia to the center of Chile. Some 4 million square kilometers, Cusco was the literal center of the world in Inca cosmology. Its name in Quechua means navel. The entire organized universe revolved around that city and, more specifically, around two structures that were the spiritual and military heart of the empire: the Coricancha and Sacsayhuaman. The Coricancha, the Temple of the Sun, was the most sacred building in the Inca world, with walls literally covered with sheets of pure gold. Sacsayhuaman was the ceremonial fortress that dominated the city from the heights, built with stone blocks of up to 120 tons assembled without any type of mortar. And according to the chroniclers of the 16th century themselves, those two structures were connected beneath the earth. The Peruvian archaeologist Jorge Calero Flores has spent decades studying Inca architecture and urbanism in Cusco. His colleague Mildred Fernandez Palomino specializes in pre-Hispanic construction techniques. Together they lead the Chinkana Sacsayhuaman project, funded by Peruvian archaeological institutions. What they did before using any modern technology was something that very few archaeologists do with sufficient rigor. They read. They read everything that colonial chroniclers wrote about the tunnels in the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, and what they found in those texts was revealing. An anonymous Jesuit wrote in 1594 a description that Calero's team would take as their main guide 500 years later. The text said that there was a tunnel that began at the Temple of the Sun, ran through the city passing beneath the bishops' houses behind the Cathedral of Cusco, and ended at the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. Another chronicler, the Jesuit Juan Anelo de Oliva, mentioned in his writings that there were multiple underground passages beneath Cusco accessible from a cave in Sacsayhuaman, and that during colonial construction work the Spanish builders had been careful not to pierce the tunnels. Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, the most famous mestizo chronicler of the colonial era, son of a Spanish conquistador and an Inca princess, wrote in his royal commentaries that there were underground streets and avenues connecting Sacsayhuaman with the Coricancha, and he added something that in his time sounded like legend, that those tunnels were so extensive and so labyrinthine that whoever entered without a rope to guide them could be lost forever. That warning from Garcilaso was not a metaphor. In 1841, General Rufino Echenique, then prefect of Cusco, ordered some of the known entrances to the Chinkana to be sealed with explosives after 3 children entered and never returned. The North American explorer Ephraim George Squire traveled to Cusco in 1864 and described that incident in his travel book of 1877, documenting that the entrances had been blocked on the general's orders precisely to prevent more disappearances. The legend of the 3 children lost in the tunnels beneath Cusco became a story that Cusco families kept telling from generation to generation. But the science of the 19th century had no tools to confirm what lay beneath their feet. In January of 2025, Calero and Fernandez's team had something that no previous archaeologist had possessed: a ground-penetrating radar donated by the Swiss company Prosec, and the support of a team of geophysical engineers. The ground-penetrating radar, also known as GPR by its acronym in English, emits electromagnetic waves into the subsoil and records the reflections produced when those waves bounce off materials of different density. An underground void, such as a tunnel, produces a very characteristic reflection that the team's software can interpret as a cavity. But before using the radar, the team employed a more basic and more ingenious technique: acoustic prospecting. Every 50 centimeters, a technician struck a metal plate against the ground and analyzed the resulting sound. Solid ground produces a dull, muffled sound. Ground with a void beneath produces a different echo, more resonant than any trained ear can distinguish. That combination of strikes and echoes told them exactly where to place the radar. What the radar revealed exceeded what the team expected to find. The main system of the Chinkana has a length of 1,750 meters, connecting the Coricancha with Sacsayhuaman continuously. The main tunnel is between 1 and 2.5 meters wide and 1 meter 60 in height, the exact dimensions that, according to archaeologist Calero, would allow an Inca ruler to be transported in a litter with his immediate retinue. The walls are of carved stone using the characteristic Inca construction technique, trapezoidal blocks without mortar, with perfectly aligned joints. The radar detected 3 branches of the main tunnel, one that reaches Calispucio, another that passes behind the church of San Cristobal, and a third that crosses the Muyucmarca sector within the Sacsayhuaman complex itself. In addition, Fernandez Palomino declared that the team estimates that the total system of tunnels beneath Cusco could reach 8 kilometers in length when the mappings are completed. The image that emerges from the analysis of the radar data is that of a city with 2 layers. Inca Cusco was not only what could be seen on the surface, the earthen streets in the shape of a puma, the golden temples, the water fountains, the markets. It was also a carefully planned underground network that connected the most sacred points of the empire beneath the earth. The tunnels were not simple emergency passageways. Their construction required sophisticated urban planning, the same that allowed the Incas to build Machu Picchu at the top of a mountain or to channel entire rivers to flow exactly where the urban design required. The Chinkana was part of the same system of thought. The space beneath the earth was as important as the space above it. The Inca cosmology divided the universe into 3 superimposed planes. The Hanan Pacha was the world above, the sky, the domain of the sun, the moon, and the stars. The Ke Pacha was the middle world, the terrestrial surface where human beings live. The Uku Pacha was the world below, the underworld, the space of the ancestors, of the dead, of the forces that sustain life from beneath. For the Incas, the Uku Pacha was not a feared place but a sacred space, the source of fertility and continuity. The tunnels of the Chinkana were literally the threshold between the Ke Pacha and the Uku Pacha, the point of contact between the living and the ancestors. Moving through them was a ritual act as well as a practical one, and connecting the Temple of the Sun with the ceremonial fortress through that underground threshold was a cosmological declaration about the nature of Inca power. Leave your like, subscribe and share. The Coricancha, the point of origin of the Chinkana, was the richest building in the pre-Columbian world. When the Spanish conquistadors entered Cusco in 1533, what they found left them speechless. The temple had a garden in which all the plants, animals, and insects were reproduced in life-size in pure gold. Golden corn cobs, golden llamas, golden flowers. The interior of the temple had walls covered with gold sheets several centimeters thick, held with gold nails. The main courtyard had a water fountain with channels plated in silver and gold. The chronicler Pedro Cieza de Leon wrote that when the sun entered through a specifically oriented window, the light bounced off the golden walls in such a way that the entire temple seemed to burn. The conquistadors dismantled all the gold within weeks, melted it down, and sent it to Spain. Over the Inca stone walls, perfectly preserved because the Inca construction technique was practically indestructible, they built the convent of Santo Domingo, which exists to this day. It is beneath that convent, beneath the church of Santo Domingo, beneath the colonial houses of the historic center of Cusco, that the Chinkana runs according to the radar data. Calero's team identified 9 excavation points along the route of the tunnel, but several of them proved inaccessible due to stone obstructions, possibly the same blockages that General San Roman ordered placed in 1841. The modern city of Cusco sits directly on top of the Inca city, and in many cases the original Inca walls are literally the foundations of colonial buildings. Excavating in the historic center of Cusco involves navigating a complex archaeological and heritage bureaucracy, with restrictions imposed by UNESCO, which declared the historic center of Cusco a World Heritage Site in 1983. Civil engineer Abel Auca Barcena and ground-penetrating radar technician Cesar Augusto Flores Acevedo were an essential part of the team that made the mapping possible. The international collaboration included the engineers from Prosec, Rodrigo Gomez and Rodrigo Duarte, whose Swiss company donated the radar equipment for the project. Geophysicist Ivan Rufino applied advanced geophysical analysis methods to interpret the GPR data. What makes this research special is precisely that combination. It was not only technology, it was technology guided by 500 years of historical documents that previous archaeologists had had before their eyes, but had not known how to use as a map. The anonymous Jesuit of 1594 was, in practice, the team's true guide in 2025. The Peruvian Archaeological Association publicly endorsed the findings. The Peruvian Congress presented a motion to formally recognize the importance of the Chinkana and promote its conservation and study. The discovery made front pages in media around the world, from Smithsonian Magazine to the Art newspaper, from Popular Mechanics to the leading newspapers of Latin America. Because what was confirmed in January of 2025 was not just an archaeological curiosity. It was proof that Inca urbanism was far more sophisticated than any history book had described, that the city the Incas built did not end at the surface, that there was an invisible underground Cusco, which existed in parallel to the Cusco that everyone could see. The case of the Chinkana of Cusco is a reminder of something that archaeology demonstrates time and again, that legends are almost never just legends. For centuries, the people of Cusco knew that there was something beneath their feet. They told it in stories of lost children, of inaccessible treasures, of passages connecting the two ends of the sacred city. Science took 500 years to prove them right. A Swiss ground-penetrating radar, a technician striking the ground every 50 centimeters, and 2 archaeologists who carefully read an anonymous Jesuit of the 16th century were enough to confirm what the collective memory of a city had preserved for generations. The Chinkana exists, the labyrinth is real, and its secrets, sealed since 1841, are about to come to light. Leave your like, subscribe, and share. Until next time.